Voidborn Mythology by Axel Hellstrand. Episode 1, The Monster. The world of man is no more, and in its place, a new world known as the Egg of Voidborn has taken its place. In this world exists thousands of islands and lands, but our story begins on a rather unremarkable island known as Fiskmarsheim. This tiny green island is inhabited by a species known as Fiskmars. These creatures belong to a bigger animal group known as the Skyborns, descendants of the birds that have been blessed with the human intelligence from their goddess. The Skyborns were bigger than common birds. The size varied between the different species, but most were as big as 3-year-old human children. Most of the Skyborns were very colourful, especially the males. Every colour of the rainbow could be found, except for the Fiskmarses, which were as grey as the rocks that surrounded their islands. The only colourful part of their body were their beaks, arms and legs, which were as orange as the sun. What they are is not important, but what is important is the story of the Fiskmars Neil. Neil, like most Fiskmars, was a humble sea hunter, but he was also a struggling sea hunter. Many times he was not able to bring food to the table, and his family were forced to live in a worn-down house made out of parts of shipwrecks. All of his family were dressed in rags made out of seagrass. Most of the villagers would happily help his family from their economical issue, but Neil refused to get any help from others and wanted to do everything by himself. Recently, he had been gone for a whole week without anyone knowing where he truly was. On the highest peak of Fiskmarsheim lay Neil on top of the moss-covered mountain. Tears streamed from his big orange eyes, and for a whole hour he would lay there and cry, until he was interrupted by a familiar voice.
Papa, I found ya.
Esme, is that you?
They embraced each other and tears streamed from their eyes.
But why did you leave us, Papa? Don't you like us anymore?
No, of course I do. I love all of you more than anything in this world. I really do, but I can't return back. I cannot.
But why, Papa?
I become a danger to our family.
But I don't care, Papa. I want you to go home with me.
No, I can't!
Neil pushed her away from him.
But Papa!
You must leave, Esme. You're not safe with me.
No!
Esme walked back and tried to hug her father again.
I will never leave you.
Out of nowhere, Niall snapped, and the once loving father had become furious and pushed his daughter away yet again.
Listen to me, Esme. I am your...
Papa, what is happening? Papa?
Mid-sentence, his body began to break, his voice turned deeper, and his throat began to burn. In unbearable pain, he laid on the ground and curled into a ball.
Papa, what is happening? Papa? Papa?
Run, Esme! Run! First...
His body began to change, and the sound of cracking bones could be heard as a tail grew from his body. His beak dropped to the ground, and a jaw filled with dagger-like teeth took his place. He dropped most of his feathers, and in its place were crimson, leathery scales. The feathers that remained turned to black. The transformation was complete, and Neil stood up. The once small Fiskmars had now turned into a 4-meter beast. The newly formed creature stared down at Esme with his golden eyes. The beast just stared at her for a while before giving out a great roar, and fire came out of the beast's mouth. The creature raised its foot and was ready to squash Esme like a bug. Suddenly, the creature stopped in its movement and a layer of ice and frost covered the beast's body. Behind the frozen monster stood a great hairy creature, and cold mist flew out of the creature's mouth. This was no ordinary beast or monster, but a Mathan, and the guardians of this island. These creatures were the descendants of the ancient animals known as bears. They are stocky, broad-shouldered and covered in snow-white fur with eyes as purple as amethysts. As big as 3 Fiskmasters combined, his clothes, from his trousers to his big long cape, were made out of the autumn leaves that covered the ground of the island. The Mathan looked down at his defeated opponent before shifting his gaze towards the little child, and he slowly approached.
Are you alright, little one? I'm here to bring you back home.
Esme did not respond, and her whole tiny body was shaking.
Oh, poor little Esme. Everything shall be fine when you come home. I promise you that.
There was still no response from Esme. The Mathan picked up the child and held her in his hairy arms. He didn't walk far before the Mathan stopped in his tracks. He heard the cracking of ice and a great snarl. The guardian turned quickly around, and there stood the monster, free from his frozen prison and even more furious than before. The Mathan now felt like a fool. He did know that this creature would not be easy to restrain, and his foolishness would maybe now cost them both of their lives. The creature roared and beat on his chest like an ancient furious gorilla. The Mathan knew that standing here and fighting would endanger Esme. He held Esme tight and jumped from the mountain. Before they reached the ground, the Mathan grabbed a part of the mountain, and with his left arm and foot, he would hastily climb down. The Mathan found a big rock and hid Esme behind it. Before he could do anything more, he felt a tremor in the earth, and behind him stood the monster. Even though Mathans had a strong build, sharp claws and teeth, they rarely preferred to fight, always trying to find a peaceful solution. Their elders always told them at a young age that there would be a time that they had to stand their ground and fight. Now the time had arrived.
That's it! Let's finish this!
This would not be a battle between skilled martial artists, but between 2 aggressive animals. The Mathan bit, scratched, and even tried to freeze the monster with his frozen breath, and by the skin of his teeth would dodge the monster's devastating attacks. Every time the monster missed his kicks, it would instead hit the ground and small craters would be formed. The monster was just a simple animal. It realized that the Mathan was too agile and it could never hit him. The monster roared again and fire spewed out of his infernal jaws. The surprisingly agile Mathan nearly avoided the fire, and half of his face got burned. The Mathan screamed out of pain and stunk out of burned hair. The monster saw his opportunity and grabbed the Mathan by the throat. The Mathan gasped for air. He could feel his windpipes breaking. He could hear the cracking of his neck, and after a while, he stopped feeling the pain of his burned face. The horrid sight of the monster disappeared into the dark, and a white light illuminated. It felt peaceful and tranquil, but also wrong. The Mathan, in a desperate last-ditch effort, slashed the monster's left eye. The monster screamed out of pain. It let go of the Mathan and covered his left eye. The guardian could now breathe once again and tried to finish the monster in its distracted state. The guardian jumped at the monster and was ready to slash its throat. The monster retaliated with a kick to the Mathan's stomach. The guardian flew several meters away and crashed into a tree that split apart. His ribs were broken. He coughed blood. He tried to stand up but fell back to the ground. He was too weak to fight anymore, and he was now at the mercy of the monster. The monster charged towards the Mathan and would finish the mammal. To be continued.